This video is brought to you by my Discord and my Blue Sky. Check the links down in the description below.
I'm surprised they even included man boy.
Boy thing.
Boy thing.
Man boy?
Man boy.
Yeah.
That's an OC if I've ever heard one. Holy shit. Man boy. Hey, what's going on, you guys, and welcome back to That's a Wrap. My name is The Raptor, and on a very special double feature of the podcast, we're going to be covering the two most recent episodes of Deathbattle, Ruby Rose versus Maka Albarn, and Blade the Daywalker versus Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But before we get started with any of that, let's introduce who we have on the panel today. We got a good group for you today. Today we have a bunch of returning people. We have Zero, first and foremost, one of the biggest mainstays, I would say, for this series. Great to have you back, Zero. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's great to be back, and glad you let me out of the basement again.
Yeah, but only until this is over.
Bitch.
All right, and next up we have Jolt Scene, aka Jolt, a punk rocker. Yes, he is. How you doing, Jolt?
I'm just here to confront you of why you called cyborg that word.
I did not say anything. Do not incriminate me, Jolt. I swear to God.
We know what you did.
Yeah, sure. And last up we have Soul. No, not the Soul you're thinking of. Or maybe he is. How you doing, Soul?
Yeah, hi, I'm Soul. I've been on the show a long time ago, and if you're wondering why I have Soul Eater Evans on as my profile picture, I don't know. I think it's relevant or something. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it might become relevant. I don't know. We got a lot to talk about. I don't know if Soul Eater's going to come up that much. No, but thank you guys so much for joining the podcast. I appreciate it tons. And yeah, that's two episodes we're covering today. We're going to speed run through both of them. I'm really excited to get this started. We will start, of course, with episode 200, Ruby versus Maka. So jumping right into this and discussing the animation, the fight, the track, all that good stuff that we see in that section of the video. Zero, we'll start with you. What did you think about the Ruby versus Maka fight?
I think the fight itself was honestly, in retrospect, I'm giving it like a 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I think the way it starts is actually really funny. The fight choreography itself, the scythery, as Boomstick put it, is actually really well done. I also really like the Soul Adagio mashing up with the fight itself. The only thing that takes me out of it is the Silver Eyes coming out, and then Ruby just kind of stands there and dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it is a little abrupt. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's very abrupt, but I do overall like it as a fight animation. I just wish that Ruby did more with the Silver Eyes.
Okay, fair enough, yeah. I can definitely say, I don't know what number I would give it out of 10 necessarily, but I can definitely say that the animation itself was probably better than I expected. Like, I was really impressed by the scythe-on-scythe choreography. I wasn't expecting that to be, like, as visually entertaining as it was, so I was really happy to get that out of it, yeah.
I love this fight. So the recent death battles that, like, after Simon versus Kyle have been, like, very underwhelming to me, but so like when this came out, like I was like, oh, we're so back.
Okay, well, I'm happy you brought it back for you then.
Yeah, because like I'm into like the death battles that are like that adrenaline rushing, like how All Might versus Micah is, for example, and Ruby versus Maka had that, and I loved it, and like the piano scene and all that, and then this is definitely one of the best milestones they've ever made, since like I wasn't a big fan of the Mario Sonic rematch or the Kool-Aid Man Macho Man.
Well, I was literally about to say, what's the competition again? For 100, 150, 50, Goku versus Superman 2. Yeah, you could definitely poke some holes in some of those other ones.
And I also love how it's a tribute to Monty Oum. Like I love how they didn't advertise it as episode 200 because they wanted it to be more of a tribute to the man that got them this far.
Yes.
And I really love that.
The reason why it's episode 200 is a lot more important than the fact that it is episode 200. I definitely agree. And yeah, I still think, again, this was the best matchup for episode 200. I really like the little end card they put at the very end of the video. You know, thank you, Monty, with the beautiful art of Ruby and Maka. Like that was a very, very nice touch. So yeah, I'm really happy about that. And I do think that, I personally think Monty would have really enjoyed this if he saw it, because again, so much passion was put into this for sure.
I actually surprisingly enjoyed this fight, and I would say this is probably like my favorite 3D animation of this year. And that's saying a lot because, well, I love 3D fights, and I especially love like good writing, good choreography in animations and in battles. And like to me, like this year has just been missing that like a whole lot, especially with the 3D fights. And I don't want to like say that like that's just because of like Devil Artemis or whatever he's done with, because it's been mostly his animations. But I just found that like mostly like the writing aspect of like the choreography has just been lacking, and because of that, I really love Ruby versus Maka's like fight animation. The choreography is actually really amazing. As Zero said, the scythery that's been in play is like super fluid. It's awesome. I don't know what else to say about it at the moment.
No, for sure, yeah, and choreography is definitely like a different beast. Like, I think usually that more so stems from like the director or the storyboard artists, and then the animator kind of just goes off of that. So yeah, choreography can definitely vary wildly from episode to episode, depending on who's doing the storyboarding or who's directing or what you can pull out for the characters. And these characters are definitely not the most versatile characters compared to like a lot of the other characters we've seen on the show, like in this season. So I think that might have helped kind of like, it kind of forced them to focus more on the scythe on scythe action, the scythery, you know. It kind of forced them to take that extra step and make it like, okay, so it's going to be a lot of scythe on scythe stuff. How do we make this look good? And I think they did a good job in making it look good. Oh, and Jolt just changed his profile. Is that Amazing Digital Circus?
Oh, yeah, I didn't know you were noticing.
Well, I can see it, bro. It's what's being recorded. It's okay, don't worry about it.
And also don't have to get started on the track, which is also amazing as well.
I really like how the battle music, at least because I think there are like two different versions of the track like posted on its own, but I especially really like how in the battle, like once Soul Evans locks in, it's like, okay, so the track just completely changes with, you know, the battle itself. I thought, you know, obviously such a very simple idea, but still like an amazing idea, an amazing touch. I would actually say, just on the whole versatility side, that I do think maybe they could have gone a little further with, you know, some variety of dust that Ruby has, for instance. Like, don't get me wrong, like, the scythe on scythe action, like, the close range stuff is really well animated. So it's not like I want to say, like, oh, there should have been less of it. But I do think maybe some of the ranged attacks that these characters have, maybe they could have played off on that a little bit more. But again, that's not really a huge complaint when the choreography that's in there is still really good, in my opinion. And yeah, anything else I want to mention? I thought the character models and the set design, all of it was very clean. I think the characters felt really well represented by both the writing of the dialogue, but also just the voice actor performances. I think all the voice actors did really well, because there's more than two this time. But I think everyone did really well as far as voice acting goes. And as far as,
I hope that the Ruby voice actress did well, considering that's the official one.
Yes, I am very happy that they got her, even though they're not affiliated with Rooster Teeth anymore. They still got her to do the voice. Yes, I'm very, very pleased with that. And also just the general sound design. For something like this, obviously, you would hope that the sound design would be a little more extravagant. And not to say that it's like the best out of like any death battle. I still think Trunks versus Silver is one of the best episodes as far as sound design goes. And there are other examples where you could be like, oh yeah, that's really, really good. This one, I'd say, is basically, it delivered on what I expected. Like, it goes a little further for the things you would expect. Not to say it has the craziest sound design in the world, but I was very content with what they did for it. Sound design is really hard. I can say that as an audio student, that it is quite hard to do. Okay, so moving on to the analyses and the general writing of the episode. Jolt, what did you think about all of that?
I really love how they talking about both the characters in their own original analysis. I love how like they treat Ruby like this young girl who's basically like just all happy-go-lucky, and then as the story progresses, she gets all stressed out because she's the youngest of the group. She attended a school that she was not old enough to attend, and she became a leader, and now she has to bear the stress of being that leader, not to mention like all the things that went on with her life. Yeah. Where some of her friends dying and all that. I love the royalty-free music that they used on this one too. I'm still trying to look for the one they used for Ruby, because I really love that too.
Okay, great. And yeah, no, I can definitely, I definitely caught that as well, where it's like, you know, you start at school, and you know, when you're in school, you know, it kind of doesn't matter how many times you fail, because it's just school. You know, you can try again the next day, but you know, once you have to leave school and you're forced out into the real world, things become a lot more dire, things become a lot more stressful. And not to say that I'm out, you know, slaying Grimm every day or whatnot, but like, as someone who has, you know, moved from university to the real world and all of that, like, I feel like a lot of us can definitely relate to that feeling of you're happier and you feel a little safer, but then everything just kind of switches up on you once you grow up. And I do think that's a good metaphor for what a lot of people go through.
Yeah, that's as much as I can say that how I don't really like Ruby's current writing after Volume 3. I still like the themes, like they still explore with the characters.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that for sure.
One other aspect of death battles that I attach to more than other people are the analyses, because a lot of the times I don't really know what the franchises are, what the series are that Death Battle covers, and this time is no different. Like, even though I'm named Soul, I went by the name before I even knew what Soul Eater was. So yeah, like
no, I'm pretty sure you're still...
like,
yeah, you're just Soul Evans
like,
now.
even then,
sorry, bro.
Yeah, I'm just Soul Evans now. I'm now a part of the verse, but yeah, like, this is no different. Like, I've never seen Soul Eater before, and I've never seen Ruby before. So, like, this was a new experience for me. I didn't remember what Venom vs. Chrono was like all about for introducing Soul Eater. So this was like a whole new introduction. And with Soul Eater, I actually really liked it. I think it like covered their backstories really well, and it covered basically everything that I think they needed to from like someone looking from the outside. Like, it actually made me wanna like see Soul Eater for like a little, or check it out, which doesn't really happen.
Okay, well, that's
very
great.
rare, because Ruby's analysis was, I'll say it's mostly okay. Like, they didn't really cover her as a character as much, and I think it stems from like there was like a part in the analysis where they completely skipped over like a lot of her like struggles and like backstory. Like in a later volume, they just completely skipped over like a whole section, and it felt really noticeable on the first watch and on rewatches. Like, she went through struggles a lot, and how like she struggles as a leader, and you know, all the struggles that like one could expect. But instead of like highlighting and of how she overcame it, they just completely skip over and just say, but she got over it, and just continued on. And that felt weird. That's like, it seems as though like there was a whole lot there that I was missing, like a whole lot of context. That to me was like probably the weakest part, and that honestly like brings that episode like down quite a few points for me personally, because I still don't really find Ruby that fascinating as a character as much.
Well, I can definitely say that I noticed that as well upon rewatch. The very abrupt, like, yeah, she got over it. They definitely did go over some aspects of her character, which I appreciated, but overall, I do think that Maka's analysis was better. I can definitely agree with that, because I think the editing goes a little harder in Maka's analysis. I think the pacing of the information is better. Like, with Maka, there's a really good pace of like, we start talking about her story, and then we start talking about the abilities that she gains as her story progresses, like her and Soul's story progresses. And it's kind of like you're following the story and the powers like as they unfold in the series. Whereas for Ruby, there's a lot of like jumping around, especially in like the second half. And that's a lot more noticeable to me, where it just feels a little messier. And I wouldn't be surprised where they're like, oh, yeah, she got over it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a section written about that and they just cut it for time and then replaced it with she got over it. Because I agree, that's very unlike Death Battle. That usually doesn't happen. They were both good, they were both serviceable, but I do think there is a discrepancy there in Maka's favor.
It felt like there was just a lot of stuff missing from Ruby's side. Like, it put a lot more focus on story elements in Maka's analysis. I can't really say I remember anything like story heavy that they went over for Ruby, other than like maybe like the fall of Beacon or something.
Yeah.
I might be wrong. It's been a minute since I've seen it. Not every analysis has to be story driven, but the fact that it just feels really minimal in that regard kind of puts a dent in the analysis for Ruby for me.
I think if I remember correctly, like, they focused a lot more on like Ruby's battles and the characters she beat, rather than like going in depth of like the challenges she overcame on like a personal level. Whereas for Maka, they did that a lot more.
Yeah, I think it was just a lot easier to combine both aspects with Maka. maybe it's just a little more difficult in Ruby's case, but it still kind of puts a dent in it for me.
I can see that. And I can definitely agree with Soul when I also say that analyses are so important. Like, for me, those are like 50-50 with the animation. Honestly, like, I totally mean that, where I say the analyses are just as important to an episode of Deathbattle, at least to me. I know a lot of people don't agree, but that's just the way I see it. Because I think it's just one of the major goals of Deathbattle to, you know, present the characters properly. I know a lot of people really do enjoy this episode, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy it too, but I do think it is very fair for a complaint you have in the analyses to lower your score of an episode, because like, I do think that is a job that Deathbattle can't slack on. Not to say they intentionally slacked, but I do think they could have done a better job with presenting Ruby's character, I guess. And as far as everything else, I do think they were still overall pretty well written for the most part, like a good flow of information. I think it was a near perfect use of black boxes. Sometimes I get a little annoyed when they put something in a black box, or I really think they should have said it out loud, but this time I really had no complaints with that, so I was really happy to see that. The humor was kind of whatever. Like, I don't think there were any like horrendous jokes, but there definitely wasn't anything that like stood out or anything that was memorable. And I think, yeah, there was a good description of the power systems for both of them. Even though for Ruby herself, I think they could have improved as far as like describing the world of Ruby and like how the power system worked. I think they did a good job with that, and it does make me think that it could make a good introduction to either of the series, especially Soul Eater. But for either of the series, I think someone could watch it and potentially get really interested in just the world itself. And now, with that said, we can move on to the outcome and the reasoning. I have to imagine we aren't going to have much to say about this part, but we can move forward with it anyway.
They should have scaled Ruby to Ragna and Superman.
Yeah. Well, they said that she met him, so where's the scaling, guys? Come on now.
Scaling, Deathbattle? Ben Singer, where is my Superman Herald scaling? Where is it?
She's a punk rocker, guys.
She's a punk rocker.
We should have scaled how much.
Soul, do you agree with this outcome, perchance?
Nah, man. Me and Maka should have stomped harder. We should have absolutely obliterated her. No concept of diff. What is this?
Yeah,
giving
you disagree because they didn't glaze her hard enough. Yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but in all seriousness, yeah, I'm pretty sure most people were expecting, like, yeah, Ruby loses to Maka. Maka just outscales higher. I have stuff to say about like how they showcase that information,
sure.
And I think it's just about like the way that they just do like all the categories and stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of them doing it all the time, but in any case, I feel like a big problem with the conclusion is that they start off right off the bat with just strength and overall how much higher Maka scales to Ruby. And like they started off with saying like, oh, she's like a billions of times stronger, and it just made the like everything else in the conclusion like matter a lot less. Like it's like, oh hey, Maka was super strong, like billions of times stronger. That like, which would mean that like realistically Ruby would have nothing to harm her against. But you know, that's okay. Speed, that's not everything. Let's go along with speed and skill. Like those will matter the most.
Well, okay,
those will help out.
To be fair, like, and this isn't, you know, necessarily specific to Ruby versus Maka itself, but one thing I will say is, you know, sometimes a character's abilities, again, if you have like some kind of durability hacks or something, then abilities could potentially negate some earlier reasoning about like, oh, like, this character can't harm this character because they're not strong enough. But again, in a later category, maybe they could be like, but they actually have this that could hurt the character. And I'd agree with you a lot more if they were doing the conclusion before we saw who won, but because we already knew that Maka won from that point, I guess it didn't really bother me that much. Because I do understand what you're saying, where it's like, is there really any other point to covering like other stuff if we've already gotten this? If you do have a character that is really fast, like much faster and much haxier, then that could 100% potentially overrule someone's strength and durability advantage. But in retrospect, with Ruby not having those advantages, then it's kind of like, okay, well then, yeah, was there much of a point? Again, doesn't bother me too much, but I can understand what you're saying.
Other than like not giving her the punk rocker scaling, I do think that they were correct. Yeah, I just don't really have many thoughts on it. I do like how their conclusive analysis does reflect the animation in a way. It's just like, yeah, it's.
So you think the advantages were like well showed in the fight?
Pretty much. Like, other than like maybe like outright strength, I think that one might be a little hard to show off. But
well, usually I would say that for speed too for most fights, because like if one character is so much faster, then it's like realistically, how do you have a battle where they're like clashing with each other all the time and like, you know, doing like
that one makes sense, I guess, for like narrative standpoint.
Exactly.
And strength as well.
It just so happens that, you know, these characters do end up being around even in speed to the point where it does seem pretty realistic. But there are some fights where it's like the speed gap is so huge where it's like, okay, so this character shouldn't have been able to land a hit at all.
An animation to buff this guy.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised it was closer, and it was closer than I expected. I was expecting this to be a stomp.
Well, I mean, some people might still call it that. Like, if you map out the advantages, it's like, yeah, Maka has 2, Ruby has 1, and they tie in 1. So from that perspective, it might not seem as one-sided. But like Soul said, if you look at the discrepancy in strength, that's still pretty massive.
Yeah. I just like it's mostly like stuff like speed. Like I've been engaging with the versus community for like since like freshman year of high school.
How are you still alive?
I never thought I'd see the day where we have Ruby as faster than light. Because like I've seen it being argued a lot of the times, but like there's always like arguments against it, and the arguments against it are always like seen as more valid than the arguments supporting it. And so like the fact that they bought it and like made a decent argument, I don't say I fully agree with it, but like it's I can understand the argument.
To be fair,
could agree with it.
There are more examples than just the atom blocking a particle beam. There are more examples that could get Ruby to that point. So I think maybe thinking about the community in mind, if they thought more about, you know, what the community thinks about the speed scaling, maybe they would have brought up more examples, because there definitely are. It's not just the atom stuff that could potentially get her there. So maybe it would have been nice if they brought up more than just that one.
Yeah,
it would have been nice, but like it should more so be what they come up with, what they think, rather than what the community does.
They shouldn't be trying to conform to any preconceived notion that they genuinely don't believe in. It should be what they think. Yeah. As far as me, yeah, like I 100% agree with this outcome. The categories, in my opinion, were basically exactly what I was expecting. Like, I knew that, you know, Ruby, if anything, was going to be more skilled. I could see it going either way in speed, but there was just really nothing that Ruby had that could stand up to Maka's power and her abilities. And I do think the numbers were also pretty reasonable. I think it was a really good mix of saying, like, the most important stuff for the characters, but also trying to be accurate. There are some battles where it's like they are really trying to make it sound close, and I don't really agree with that choice, because you kind of sacrifice accuracy for trying to make it sound like a closer fight, and it's like I just don't really agree with that, because you should be trying to portray them as accurately as possible. But for this battle, I think they actually did a good job of being like, okay, yes, Maka is this strong, she is this much stronger than Ruby most likely, and I really respected that, instead of them because they could have just left it at one of Maka's lower feats, but they didn't do that. They actually went into what they felt her best feat was, and I really appreciated that. My one surprise for the outcome, I will say, though, was the Silver Eyes. A lot of us were making the comparison between the Silver Eyes, or I guess how the Silver Eyes work on the Grimm, and the Black Blood, and a lot of us thought, well, there's probably not enough evidence for that to work. But Deathbattle actually compared it to Madness wavelengths. And, you know, I can get behind it overall, especially since it didn't end up mattering that much. I think I would have preferred, though, if maybe they phrased it more as the Silver Eyes might have a similar effect as, like, wavelength or madness canceling wavelengths, because I don't really think there's enough evidence to prove that it would 100% work, because we don't really know exactly why the Grimm are affected by the Silver Eyes. Like, it could just be because they're a creation of the God of Darkness or whatever, and if that's the case, then I don't think the madness wavelength should be affected at all, right? But I can still get behind what they were going for. If you really lean on that emotional comparison, then yeah, you can definitely make the argument for that. And of course, you know, Maka affecting the aura, not only did I think there was a much stronger case to be made for that, but I think that was also just a lot more significant to the outcome of the debate. So it's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I like that they made like an actual like genuine argument for like something that Ruby can do against Maka, and like I do like how like they phrased it, and I think that's probably like my favorite part of the conclusion, how they use that to transition to like how like to build like a character moment, of saying like they were able to overcome all that type of adversity, and because their bond is unbreakable, so then Ruby wouldn't be able to break that. So yeah, I quite like that as well.
Yeah,
I agree with
and maybe their phrasing of like it would have a similar effect. Maybe it was them trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, or maybe they do honestly believe that yes, it would 100% cancel Madness wavelengths. Whatever. I just maybe would have preferred if they swapped out a word here or there, but then that's a very small nitpick in the grand scheme of things. And again, you know, Maka's powers were just a lot more effective anyway. Like even if it was as definitive as that, I don't think it matters that much, and clearly Deathbattle didn't think it matters that much either, so there's really nothing too wrong with it. Okay, so that's great stuff for Ruby versus Maka. Now we can move on to Blade versus Buffy, and I probably have a few more things to say about this one. Jolt, I wouldn't be surprised if you do as well. You're a big Buffy fan too, right?
Yeah.
I'm also a big Buffy fan.
Oh yeah, okay, great. We got big Buffy fans in the house. Zero.
I'm the only one out here. I'm much more of a Blade fan.
Come on, you gotta watch Buffy. Okay, honestly though, watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm really hoping that this episode gets.
How about instead I just read all 128 novels and never touch the show?
I did not know the novels even existed.
Oh no.
Me neither.
Tons of comics, tons of novels. Although honestly, like I do think the show is like, yes, you know, Joss Whedon has a heavy hand in it, and that's not great, but the show itself like is still very well written. It changed a lot of like television tropes, even some movie tropes. Like it is actually incredibly significant to like the modern landscape of entertainment, you know, TV. Like it's actually crazy how much it changed. So I would definitely recommend anyone listening, like if you have any interest in watching Buffy now, please go watch it. Like, especially like...
Don't listen to Family Guy.
Yeah, don't listen to Family Guy.
Because Family Guy said this show is never popular.
Yeah, that's not true. The show has been popular. It's not really relevant anymore, but it will be once the continuation series starts up, which I'm really excited for.
They're making a continuation?
You didn't know that?
I heard about that.
Okay,
I did not know that.
I think it's mostly new characters with maybe some returning actors, but like it's set in the same world. Like yeah, it's a new Buffyverse show. And anyway, though, enough of the general Buffy talk. I obviously we're all big Buffy fans, and I love to see that because I didn't even realize we had this many Buffy fans in the server. so I'm really happy about that. But anyway, yes, we can talk about Blade versus Buffy, the third live action Ismahawk collaboration. I think for this one we'll start with Soul. What did you think about the battle itself, the live action, the choreography, all of that stuff? What did you think?
Oh yeah, hands down, like the best live action fight that they have done compared to the other two.
I would agree.
Like the general quality of like the fight and the overall fight choreography is amazing. I love how they didn't just start right away by having them fight in the beginning, and they actually fought. They did what they did best and just fight vampires and and naturally weave in the initial conflict. Like I love good writing like that. And like it was definitely a good. I like the fight choreography as well for most of it. I love the actors. They definitely portrayed the characters themselves best. I love how Buffy played. Do wish they talked a bit more and maybe did a bit more clips, but I completely understand with that why they wouldn't do that. It's definitely hard for doing that in a live action, especially just focusing on the fight choreography themselves. I genuinely think it's like amazing. Like this was like one of my most wanted death battles for like a very long time, and it was like, and especially like being in live action definitely made it more special for me.
Yeah, both Ruby versus Maka and Blade versus Buffy actually I would have said were like among my most wanted death battles. Like not like the top of the top, but like, you know, just among my most wanted for, you know, before they got announced. So yeah, that's really awesome. And yeah, I definitely have a lot of stuff to say about the stuff that you brought up. But the main thing I wanna say really quick is just, yes, like I absolutely loved the build up. I think obviously you have some battles where you have the characters that are like fighting other things during the fight. Like you see that in Master Chief versus Doomslayer, Leon versus Frank, even like freaking Black Panther versus Batman, they do it a little bit. And I'm really happy that they did it in this one, because obviously with Blade versus Buffy, like if you just start them off fighting each other, then you don't get to explore that side of the characters where they're just fighting like hordes of enemies and vampires, but they actually still manage to put that into this battle by just having it be at the beginning and then getting into an uninterrupted fight between the two. Like, I love that. That I think was like the best way they could have chosen to do that. And also the inciting incident, the fact that Blade kills the infected girl and then Buffy's like, she was just a kid. Like, oh my god, that is such like a perfect conflict for Blade and Buffy to have. It is totally like how they would act based on not only their morals, but also like the rules of vampirism in their own universes. Like, it is so perfect that I don't think they could have done that any better. So I am very happy with like all the story elements that were implemented into this.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I do have some negatives, but like they're very few. And
yeah,
I guess the main one that that a lot of people talk about is Blade's actor's voice. It's not his fault at all, and like that's just his natural voice. I just do think that like maybe they could have like done a little bit some better like voice training. Like, I think that like there could have been a little bit better than what they did. Like with how the battle set up, like they didn't have them talk for like the most of the beginning, and then like it just comes as like a shocker, like to hear like Blade's voice like that, because you don't imagine his voice to sound like that. Both of the actors' like voices and both of their performances just been great, and like even Blade's voice performance. Like, so in general, I actually pretty liked it. It's like his own take of Blade. It's just the very first line of "not anymore" that like it's like, okay, well, that took me out of it. But like,
yeah,
I think that was just like the worst one out of it. The rest of it and the rest of what he said is pretty good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you liked it.
The setup, I think, is probably the best setup in a death battle that I've seen.
Yeah.
The fact that they're at this like underground vampire-based club.
Yeah.
And both are like infiltrating it and shit, and then like they start killing vampires and stuff. You get to see all these cameos from like the death battle crew themselves.
Yeah,
like
that was
Liam
very
Swan
nice.
Was there.
Yeah, that's all awesome, and the effects too.
The effects were amazing.
Yeah.
I am very pleased with the visual effects and the sound design too. I think the sound design for it was actually pretty alright.
It's very appropriate,
like,
for sure, yeah.
Very appropriate. As for like the performances, I think both actors did really well. Again, just to bring back the point of fiction, his voice as Blade it did take me out a little bit initially, but upon like rewatching it a few times, like I got used to it. And the main thing that really held him back for it, that he explained in his own like reaction to it, he explained that it was actually the fake teeth that he had implemented.
That makes total sense,
like,
honestly. Yeah,
that was what was really holding the voice back. I think the only like gripe I have with the fight itself, when Blade shot Buffy with the breathing gun, the bullet kind of just went into her leg, and did she ever like take it out or anything? Because like that
I don't know. No, she
like,
didn't.
Oh, that's bad. Oh.
Well, knowing her, like she probably like gets it out later or something. Knowing Buffy, it's like off screen kind of thing.
To think about that she just left it in there and just walked off.
Yeah, it's like it's funny in retrospect. Just like there's like a living bullet in her leg, and she's like putting shades on and acting all cool.
Lying down, just like staring at the ceiling, like, oh fuck, there's a bullet in my leg.
That would totally be like her.
Overall, I think the fight itself was really good.
That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've said this in the Ruby Maka thing, like most death battles after Simon Kyle have been very underwhelming, so seeing like 2 episodes that gave me that adrenaline rush and gave me that hype was in a row, it's just like I'm very happy to see that. Especially this one I was like very heavily invested on.
Yeah,
I like the build up of the fight, how it's in the party, how it's like in a party setting, because like that is such a Blade Buffy thing to happen. And like it's fun, it was fun to see like the other death battle crewmates and all crew members, all of that. And I know people have been like arguing against it, but nobody can convince me that that girl, that victim, was a Kane. That girl looked too much like a Kane.
I don't want to talk about that.
That girl like looked like, I'm heavily convinced that was supposed to be a Kane.
That's
like,
that's
the same.
No.
That's another thing where, like, when I was watching it, it didn't even cross my mind, and then I look at what people are saying, and it's like, ah, crap, I should have just stopped being on the internet after I saw it. I shouldn't have looked at other places, because now I can't get that out of my head.
The choreography was like beautiful. I loved it. My only gripe with it is that it wasn't as flashy because like it's limited by live action. But yet again, like I think it was like in ballot banter or something where like one of the team members said this is a matchup that we definitely would do live action for, and then everybody was like, ooh, like ever since they said that, everybody was like advocating this matchup to be a live action fight. And so like Ismahawk, I think, really did a good job on like why this matchup was the advocated live action fight that people were like hyped to see.
And there were some people that kind of wished that, you know, maybe it was animated to show off, like, maybe Blade shape-shifting more, like some of those crazier powers, or they wish that they actually tried it for the live action. But like Zero said, like, the effects in this were so good that I would have hated it if they tried to do something so massive to the point where it would, like, lessen the quality of the other effects. Like, I think this is really a case of quality over quantity as far as the effects go, and I'm really happy about that because I think it worked out really well. I think it was shot beautifully, really good choreography, and even the smaller stuff like the makeup, the costuming, the lighting, like all of it I think was so on point for the ambience that they were creating. I do think some things like the pacing and the track suffer a little bit, but I think that kind of goes with like all the live action fights where it's like it's very clear that they're prioritizing other things like the ambience and the choreography, which I think was very crucial for this matchup, and I think they absolutely nailed. And Soul also made a note about maybe wanting to hear more dialogue. I definitely agree with that. I think they could have gone a little further with that, maybe some of the banter, because I think there maybe were some cute moments that they could have implemented in there, but I still think it worked. I think it's fine for what it is. Okay, so I think we can move on to the analyses at this point. Again, I think we can all agree that we really loved the production of the battle, but as far as the analyses go and how everything was written, Zero, what did you think?
I think it was really well handled on both ends. I can't really think of anything specific, but there's one thing I did notice, and that was like in like the previews that they put out, like, you know how they upload like little snippets of the analysis as like, you know, like a teaser of what's to come, right?
Yeah.
It felt very apparent early on that Blade was just gonna die.
Okay, I don't watch those
really?
because I don't want to ruin my reaction, so I don't know what's in a preview and what's not when I watch a video.
It's to put it in perspective, they put like pretty much everything that would resist whatever Blade could do. They kind of showed that off a little early.
So the resistances, okay, because that's definitely a big point in Buffy's favor.
And
yeah,
lots of big points were put in Buffy's corner to a point where it kind of did spoil the outcome a little bit, I think.
Interesting.
Even if I was still holding on to hope for Blade, it's still like, even if you don't watch the previews, you can still feel it's like very apparent, very early on, like who's gonna win and who's gonna lose.
Okay, well, like I said, I don't watch those videos, so I wasn't really getting that impression. But I also think that Blade still had a lot of good things going for him, and I'll talk more about this when we get to the outcome section of it. But as I was trying to go in, like, determining who would win before I saw the battle, like, I still thought both of them had their fair share of strengths, even with Buffy's very apparent resistances, and you can kind of like match things up early on for what she could resist. But again, I'll get more into that later. But I can understand as someone who watches the previews, and if you can pick up on that stuff, it might be a little annoying.
For Blade, it's basically my same opinion with Ruby Maka. Buffy, since it's like this is like the first time we're seeing like a new franchise. I like to, especially a franchise I'm really like picky on how they represent it in their first try.
Sure.
I'm pretty satisfied what they did. They showed my girl Willow, so I was like 10 out of 10 episode already.
A quick second of Dark Willow as well, which I was very happy because the Dark Willow arc is so cool.
And even like stuff I didn't know about, because it's like I didn't even know there was a Buffy video game. I didn't read all the comics. It's like, that's a lot of comics.
Yeah. Over 500.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that she had more comics than Blade.
Right. No, I remember I had to do a pretty deep dive into the comics when I was doing my own Buffy research like a few years ago. But even still, like, yeah, that's a shit ton of material if you look at everything. It's crazy.
That's like over 200. Yeah, but I was like geeking out when they were like talking about like glory and all that.
Yep.
I also like how they like talked about Blade's like conflict with his daughter and how he trained his daughter at the end as well.
Yeah. That's something really interesting as well, because obviously with Buffy, you have to talk about the emotional turmoil that she goes through. Like, especially with her getting resurrected, it literally, like, kills her will to live. Like, season 6 and 7, Buffy is just, like, raw depression, which is a complete 180 of how she is at the beginning of the series, for instance. And, like, you have to talk about that stuff because it's so important to her character. And with Blade, it seemed like they were trying to find an equivalent to that, which ended up being the stuff about his daughter. And while I'm very happy that it gave them an excuse to do that, I'm curious that if he was fighting someone else who wasn't such an emotionally charged character, would they have even included that for Blade? And I'm thinking maybe they wouldn't have, because it's not like that integral to his character. Like, Buffy's emotions are a lot more important to her character than Blade's is. Like, Blade's emotions are still important, but like not as much as Buffy, I would say. But I'm really happy that Buffy, being the kind of character that she is, it kind of forced them to talk about maybe a slightly more obscure aspect of Blade's character that people wouldn't have known that is more emotionally charged. So that was really cool. I'm happy how they did that.
Like, that really just proves the point that this matchup is like perfect for the two, because it brings out the good in them, I think you can say.
Yeah. And even though they are both emotionally charged, they are so in very different ways. And that's shown by the inciting incident of the battle itself. Because they were saying how it's like, you know, Blade's daughter put her skills to the test and, you know, could have killed him, and Blade probably would have wanted that, right? Because that's the way he thinks, that, you know, if something is evil or will be evil, you just have to stop it. Whereas Buffy is more of an optimist, and like, you know, if we can save someone, we should save someone. So as a full product, it's so good. Like, it just works so well.
On Zero's point about like whether or not like this matchup was like debatable, or like how like it may have been spoiled early on, I didn't really agree with that while watching it first, and I did watch the previews as well, but nothing indicated to me that like, oh hey, Buffy might win, other than the 128 novels that she has. that was the main thing. Like, okay, so the question of the question of the matter is there anything in those novels for Buffy that will surpass anything in comics for Blade? Because like, I was like, normally like with that much material, like I would expect one to win over the other, and I would talk about that more in the conclusion aspect. But like, yeah, overall I enjoyed like the analyses quite a bit.
I think both of them were well written. I don't think there's as big of like a discrepancy between like my enjoyment of the analyses than say like Ruby versus Maka. Like, yes, for Buffy, I did also have like decently high expectations, but like I'd say the analyses were pretty even with each other as far as quality. Not as much over the top comic editing. Like, I think, you know, for Ruby and Maka, especially Maka, like they kind of popped off with the editing, as they tend to do for like manga panels and stuff. And for this one, I wouldn't say they popped off as hard, but, you know, still well edited, still did what it needed to do. I guess maybe there were some things I was waiting, like as far as capabilities go, particularly for Blade, that I think maybe they could have shed some more light on, but nothing too huge, nothing that really like ruins the episode. The only thing though I will say is like for Boy Thing kind of feels like he got the life equation treatment from like Kyle Rayner, or I guess maybe a better comparison is like the final bat suit for Batman and Batman versus Iron Man, where it's like they feel the need to bring it up, and technically they do include it based on like how they frame it, but they don't really feel comfortable committing to it, which I don't really think you can do, right? Like, if something is that important or seen as such a big deal in the community, then even if you come to the conclusion that it wouldn't really matter that much, I think you kind of have to explain why it wouldn't matter much, as opposed to just mentioning it and then never bringing it up again. Again, similar to the final Batsuit, where it was like, I was kind of waiting for them to cover that, because some people do see it as a big deal, and for them to just not do it, I think you kind of have to go over the biggest stuff for the characters, even if it doesn't end up mattering overall.
Who and what is Boy Thing?
Shit, okay, maybe I'm the only one that gives a fuck. Boy Thing was mentioned at the very end of Blade's analysis. And I guess maybe if you don't know the talking point, because like Boy Thing has like some counters for like the Silver Surfer, like that was like one of the biggest things that that Boy Thing did when it was like with Blade. I didn't even think Boy Thing was going to be included, to be honest, but apparently it was, and it was mentioned very briefly, and there was a black box in the corner of the conclusion talking about Boy Thing. And I'm not saying I disagree with what Deathbattle came to. I'm not saying I disagree with what they said in the black box or whatever, but I am saying that, like, with it being such a big deal in what it can do and being so different from, like, Blade's normal power set, that I think you kind of have to bring it up. But again, they wanted to technically include it without committing to talking about it. And I just don't really agree with that when Deathbattle does that.
Oh man, it's this cute little man thing, a boy thing.
Well, yeah,
They should have talked about it more.
It's literally the boy version of Man Thing. Yeah. We all know Man Thing, right? From Marvel, do we?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the outcome and the reasoning. So, Jolt, we'll start with you for this one. What did you think? Do you agree with the outcome? Do you like the way it was presented? What do you think?
I agree with it. Normally with like Marvel characters, because like they have a lot of content, like a lot of comics that there's just too much to catch up. Like I'll read a couple of them and I'll love a lot of them. Like I read the Rocket Raccoon individual comics and I love those.
My respect for you just went way up. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and like since superhero movies have been so good this year, like I've been on like that superhero hyperfixation. Plus, like I got into Marvel Rivals earlier in the year.
Okay.
And so like I've been like reading more comic books. Like right now, I'm reading the Hickman Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm. That definitely first steps definitely took some inspiration from that run. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I'm starting to read all of that. I'm always expecting them to have like these crazier things. So like I never know like with matchups like this, even with like Buffy, how she has like a lot of content I have not engaged with or like even know existed. I come into these matchups like with a very open mind, or like expecting like
to learn stuff,
like,
expecting to learn something, right?
Yeah, I was fully convinced that Blade was gonna win because I heard people who actually like engaged with like some of these like stories in comics like in a versus like sense, and they all said Blade wins. So I'm like okay, so Blade beats Buffy, and then like it turns out Buffy has been very under researched because nobody knew that novels or read all the comics and all that.
And I think it's totally fair to be in the versus space and to be a fan of a character without knowing everything about that character. Like being a fan does not mean that you have to know every single aspect or have looked at every nook and cranny of their capabilities or their material.
Yeah, and so for the longest time I thought Blade beat Buffy, but then like when this episode got announced, it was like it revealed that like, oh yeah, Buffy's under research. And I'm like, oh, so she has a chance. And then people were talking about her her little intercourse scene in the comic where she blew up a mountain.
That was a temporary power boost. Her breaking down the building, that is more fair to use.
Yeah.
I did feel like they played a lot of Buffy's cards a little early, so I knew that she at least had like a good advantage over Blade in some aspects. As for the result itself, I definitely think they got it right. I'm surprised they even included Man Boy.
Boy Thing.
Boy Thing.
Man Boy?
Man Boy.
Yeah.
What? That's an OC if I've ever heard one. Holy shit. Man Boy.
He's a boy with the powers of a man.
In general, I think I do agree with it. I was definitely surprised that Buffy won. Like, as I mentioned earlier, like I was rooting for Buffy, but I didn't think that she would pull through because of Marvel comics can go crazy. But apparently, Buffy novels and comics also go crazy. So yeah, I'm happy with the result. But and like in general, with how they portrayed the conclusion, I generally like do agree. But there are like a few things where like that maybe kind of like question whether or not that like it's actually as accurate. Like they have weapons that could essentially like one shot the other, or like they have a good amount of weapons that like in general could end the fight very very quickly, but I don't think they really brought that up as much. Or like in general they said that like Buffy was stronger and like they had equal speed, but to me if like the one thing that like I kind of like don't really fully agree with is who had more skill or who had more experience. Like they argued that like Blade is like much older, like more classic experience, while Buffy had her memories of like all the past layers. And in general, like I don't know if they specified or like I don't know the lore about it, but I don't know if that like if I genuinely agree with that, because like, I mean, it's one thing to have like all the memories inside you, but can you actually like use that to your potential is another thing.
Well,
and what if they can or not? Like, I wish they have mentioned that at least, because they just said, she has a bunch of her memories.
I can see that both Jolt and I are just waiting to respond to this. Okay. I'll let Joel go after, but my general response to this is that I do, in a sense, agree that I think skill should have been a lot closer than how they portrayed it. I could have even rolled with it being a tie, to be honest, because I think that Blade's quality of skill... Because yes, quantity-wise, Buffy would have a lot more, because the way that it works is she can subconsciously draw upon the skills that other Slayers have accumulated, and because all of them die young, like, there are so many Slayers that date back to that time period that Buffy would be able to draw upon. So as far as, like, the actual quantity of it, yes, she would have more experience than Blade. However, to my knowledge... none of those Slayers were fighting characters as skilled as, say, Captain America or Wolverine.
Yeah.
Like, I think as far as the quality of it, I think that Blade had enough of an edge in that sense to make it a lot closer, if not literally a tie. I'm fine with giving Buffy the skill edge just because, like, 40 times older than Blade, like, that's a lot. That's gonna be a lot of quantity no matter how you slice it. But it definitely does more or less work that way, where it's like the skills that one Slayer had, Buffy can use them very effectively as if the skills were her own.
Yeah, in the show, it actually, like, she has shown to, like, tap into the skills of the other Slayers, and they even mentioned it in her analysis.
But yeah, in general, like, I guess I agree though, like, yeah, Buffy does win. Like, I think she's a bit more stronger, more durable, and has more resistances. I do wish that they would have brought up if she would have been able to resist the breathing gun, or like if she did get shot with it, could she survive it? Because
they brought that up
in the fight.
They brought that up in a black box, actually, which is one of the main instances where I think they should have said it out loud. Because again, when you're talking about trump cards, yes, they were saying that the scythe could reflect, like, the breathing gun's bullets back, which I think is a good point. I'm really happy they brought that up. But one of the things they said in the black boxes was the breathing gun can't affect anything, like, wholly. And Buffy's powers, as explored in the novels, are actually wholly in nature. So that's something I really think they should have brought. And don't get me wrong, they didn't say, this means that Buffy would resist the breathing gun. They were saying that it's possible that the gun might not even work at all. Because I think it is pretty vague. Like, I don't think I would say that she would for sure resist it, but I would have really preferred them to bring it up just to kind of, like, nail that home, that, like, even if Buffy couldn't just, like, reflect the bullets with her scythe, there's a chance it just might not work because of the ways Buffy's powers are described. I really wish they would have brought that up, but yes, technically they do have a little section talking about that comparison. I'd say I'm pretty similar to you. Like, I can agree with this. I went in thinking that Blade was going to win as well. I knew it was going to come down to a lot of the stuff that, like, nobody knew about. Like, for me, I can definitely say that I did not know that Buffy had those kinds of resistances, because I knew that both of them could kill each other easily, because the scythe itself, not only did it, decapitate that really strong enemy like the multiverse or universe devouring god, but it was also literally designed to kill, like, the top tier primordial demons of the Buffyverse. So, like, I knew that was going to be more than enough to kill Blade, but I thought Blade's ways of, being more than enough to kill Buffy, combined with what I guess I overestimated his speed, or I probably more so underestimated Buffy's speed, to be honest. But with what I thought was going to be a speed advantage for Blade, and with a quote-unquote lack of resistances from Buffy, that was the main thing that I thought that would allow Blade to win, even if Buffy was physically stronger, which I thought was also very possible. But obviously it didn't quite work out like that. There is a lot of good light speed scaling, it seems, for Buffy. Good for her. But also the resistances, yeah, like that's a big thing in Buffy's favor. I do think, though, that Blade's healing and his own personal skill should have been emphasized a little bit more, because I think that without the trump cards, Blade's healing and his overall stamina would be a really big factor. And I think it's the fact that Buffy could kill him immediately that's one of the main things that allowed her to win personally. Because even with Buffy's resistances, I think if it came down to a battle of stamina, I think it's very possible Blade could have won that, even with Buffy's strength and resistances, especially, again, with Blade's own personal skill, and what I think it being, you know, with him fighting characters better than the characters Buffy has fought. But it was really the fact that either of them could kill each other in one hit, but Buffy's way of doing so was a lot more reliable, that it allows me to agree with the outcome a lot more. But even still, I would have appreciated if they maybe said, like, if it came down to a battle of stamina, then Blade would have had the edge, but because it doesn't, Buffy has the edge. Because they really didn't talk much about the comparison of healing factors. But Blade's healing is definitely, you know, more over the top. So, you know, I guess I just kind of wish they brought that up a little more. And I don't blame people for having expected Blade to win, because again, you know, a lot of the important stuff for this debate, a lot of people just wouldn't have consumed. I still think, though, that people got to accept being able to be wrong, and that they have to go into an episode realizing that they can learn things, and that their preconceived notion of a character is not necessarily how the character actually is. And I think Buffy is a really good example of that, because there are still some people where they can't seem to accept that Buffy could possibly beat Blade, and it's like, okay, well, I think you're just being a little too stubborn at that point. But, you know, whatever. Like, I can agree with the outcome, and I do definitely think they brought up the most important parts. Yes, I do think it is decently close, especially if it ever got to the point where it would come down to a stamina battle, but the fact that it really wouldn't, I think, yeah, really tips it in Buffy's favor. Okay, yeah, but that's basically my thoughts on everything. Now I think we can actually move on to the next time. Dante from Devil May Cry versus Clive from Final Fantasy 16. Who's excited for this one? Soul, how are you feeling?
Decently excited. I was definitely not expecting this matchup to come next.
No,
especially
neither was I.
Definitely not expecting Dante. I was definitely not expecting Dante to return, but like, I'm like, in general, like, at first I wasn't too excited. I was like, oh hey, this seems like a cool matchup. It seems to vibe. I actually know who Clive is a little bit. But,
wow, you seem to be one of the only ones.
I was like, yeah, when watching the next time trailer, I was like, wait a minute, is that Clive and Dante? Like, whoa. But yeah, like, in general, like, my reaction to it was like, oh, okay, that seems neat. But then I learned that Torian is animating it, and I'm like, I like, Dante versus Bayonetta is like one of my favorite animations of the entire show. Yeah. And like I was like, oh, while Torian's animating it, like, oh, this is gonna be epic. It might genuinely be like my favorite of the season if it matches that quality or expectation.
Yeah, if it manages to somehow surpass Dante versus Bayonetta, like, just as far, because Dante versus Bayonetta is such a long fight, but it's also a great fight the whole way through. So it's really hard, I think, to try to live up to those expectations. But it's Torian, you know, it's not like he has to split his focus across multiple episodes. Like, this is just his episode, so I'm really hoping that, like, he's put a lot of good work into this. So, you know, I'm very excited for that. It makes a ton of sense for the Torian fight. I was really hoping for Hellboy versus Nero to be the next DMC episode, but Dante was also one of my most wanted returning combatants, so I can't really complain too much, especially since I think this is a really good option for him. Just on a lot of levels, I think that Clive actually works really well for Dante. And we get another Final Fantasy game, not just number 7. That's really awesome to see, too.
Yes. I've been in this community since, like I said, since like freshman year of high school. And Devil May Cry is like one of my favorite Capcom games ever. And like, sweet. I saw the next time and I was like mouth gaping, like, I never heard of this matchup before, but like, I mess with it. Because like I know what Final Fantasy 16 is. Like, I played it during the COVID times, but like, I never finished it because there was too many games that came out and I had too many free time, so I'm like, yeah. Torian animating it, I'm shocked it wasn't Shulk versus Lightning, because I heard people say that Lightning was like his most wanted character to animate, so I'm like, oh yeah, so the Torian episode's gonna be Shulk Lightning, but then it turned out to be this, and I'm like, you know what, I'm down for this.
To be fair, Shulk versus Lightning, I think, even just aside from Torian wanting Lightning a lot, I think that would have also been a superb choice for the Torian animation. But yeah, no, I have no issue with this being the one. Shulk versus Lightning would have been cool, but again, seeing Dante come back is pretty awesome.
I'm gonna be honest, I had like there was like a split second in my head. This was purely in my head. But it's been living rent free.
For sure.
For a split second, I misread Clive as like Clyde. So for a split second, my brain gaslit itself into thinking Dante was fighting Clyde from fucking Pac-Man.
Oh, bro. Like the ghost? Like just the one-off ghost?
Yes, the ghost, the orange ghost from Pac-Man.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know why that happened. It happened for like a split second. I'm like, no, that's not who it is. What are you, fucking stupid?
Dante's greatest supernatural threat yet. Yeah, I'm so excited. Dante versus Clyde. I'm really excited for people to learn more about Final Fantasy 16 because Clive has definitely got some unexpected stuff. I do think some people are very quick to underestimate him. Which I personally wouldn't do, but I think this is a pretty debatable fight, all things considered, so I'm really excited to see where Deathbattle takes that, what direction they go with. And Devil May Cry was one of the series that Deathbattle really got me more interested in, so to see it with Dante versus Bayonetta, so to see it kind of come full circle with another Dante episode, I'm really happy about that. Okay, so that was Ruby versus Maka, Blade versus Buffy, and a little bit of Dante versus Clyde. I'm really happy with everything you guys had to say about it. Thank you all so much for appearing on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And to everyone who's listening, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, comment your comments down below, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how Deathbattle wraps up the year. We got 2 more episodes, unless they also shove in Light versus Columbo. No idea when that's going to come out. But either way, I'm really excited for the end of the year. I hope you guys are as well. And yeah, that's it from us. And that is a wrap. Have a good night, everybody. And yeah, oh shoot. Sorry, I just got a text.
Hey, bros before hoes. Focus.
No, bro, that was from my mom.
Don't call her that, man.
How do I kick you from the call again? Hang on one second.